Life number 4, Italy. After his adventures in the Amazon jungle, Tayo was advised by his ancestors to take a long rest. Apparently things were not going too well on the blue planet, and both humans and animals were having a rather hard time, so he would need to be very strong for his next adventure. Of course, Tayo looked down on the earth and knew the sort of thing he would have to face, but then things always tend to look a little easier when one sees them from afar. Once on top of them, however, it is a different story, as many of you, no doubt, have already found out. Tayo wanted to be with humans so that he could try to give a little happiness to someone who was very poor and unloved. Well, he thought, sitting here in comfort won't get the job done. So once again he closed his eyes and let himself drift off in the way that his ancestors had taught him. The box was hot, dusty, and very dirty when Tayo opened his eyes, and he soon realized that he was a female kitten. Her mother was thin and sick, and Tayo noticed that the 2 other kittens who had been born to her had already returned to their ancestors. There was just Tayo and her mother. How she lived through those early days, she never knew. Her poor mother had little or no milk, and had it not been for the kindly old woman who brought the occasional scrap of food, she would never have survived. One evening after Tayo had been sleeping, she woke up to find her mother feeling very cold. She looked hard at her, and then she knew that she, too, had returned to her ancestors. Tayo was still very young, very small, and entirely alone in the world. While she was wondering what to do next, who should arrive but the old lady with a few meager morsels for the hungry kitten. She gently turned over the cold body of Tayo's mother, and then she said, in an old, gruff, but loving voice, "Ah, mia bambina, now you are all alone, like old Maria. Come, stay with an old woman and keep her company in her last days." Tayo loved the old lady, but she knew that, like her mother, Maria would not be staying long in this world. Together they scavenged round the dirty back streets in the hot sun and shared what scraps of food they were able to beg or scrounge. But the old lady warned her, "Keep away from the fine people, mia cara. They will say you are dirty and full of disease and will hurt you. Stay close to old Maria." Tayo did just this, but in her heart of hearts she longed to wander further afield. Tayo had never known before what it was like to be hungry and sick, and she wondered how long she would be able to keep going in the black and white body of the little female cat in which she now lived. One day she crawled into the corner where old Maria slept, but the old lady's body was cold, just as her mother's had been, and Tayo knew that she was alone once again. Sadly, she left the pile of rags in the old cellar that had been a home for Maria and herself, and stepped out into the big, cruel world. Beyond the back streets, the wide roads stretched out, dusty and sun-bleached. Tayo watched in wonder as the grand carriages swept past, carrying the nobles and their great ladies. She poked her head forward to get a better look, but a boot hit her in the face.
"Get off the streets, you filthy beast, bringing plague and disease to noble folk."
The man who spoke wore a uniform with golden braids on it, and there were big, shining buckles on his shoes. Tayo's face hurt, and her left eye wouldn't focus properly, so she retreated to the darkness of a nearby alley to nurse her injury. A voice spoke in her ear.
"Meow."
Tayo turned to face a large, black tomcat. His tail was threadbare, but he was fatter than most of her own kind that she had so far seen, and his eyes were bright and friendly. "Meow, hello," replied Tayo, and as she looked into Tom's eyes and recognized Rayan, who had been her father in Atlantis, the old country, her little heart sang. At last she had someone who could talk to her in her own Pasha language. "Come with me," said Tom. "These humans have no time for us. I'll show you where there's some food." He led her through a maze of alleyways to an old storehouse. "There are fat mice and rats to be had here, girlie, and although they make you itch, they're good to eat." He produced a recently slain carcass which they quickly devoured. As the days went past, Tayo and Tom mated. Because he was the biggest, strongest male in the area, he was able to keep away all the other cats who would have dearly loved to have their special territory in the warehouse with its constant supply of fresh food. During the night, Tom would take Tayo out to explore the city. It seemed that the people of these parts did not like cats very much at all. They either kicked them or threw things at them. Apart from the odd person like Maria, nobody seemed to consider that they needed to eat. On the other hand, many of the people were also hungry and sick, and they quarreled over morsels of food for their own children. So Tayo understood that with so little to eat themselves, they should not wish to share it. Tayo was expecting kittens. She could feel them inside her and counted 3 heartbeats. While Tom was around, she would survive, but what would happen to her if something went wrong and he didn't come home one day? Tayo put the thought out of her mind, and for a while life was bearable for her. It all started one hot afternoon when Tom and Tayo were relaxing in a small patch of sunlight that they had somehow managed to filter through the maze of dirty hovels in the back alley. Tom told Tayo that somebody had talked about there being a plague sweeping through the city. "We must keep well hidden," he told her. "The soldiers will come and they will burn many houses and all the things inside them and kill all animals on sight, for they blame us for the sickness." Suddenly, there was a clatter of hooves. Soldiers on horseback appeared at the entrance to the alley, and one shouted out, "Down there, Enrico, the stench is dreadful. Burn it out, or the plague will spread and reach the fine houses on the other side of the city." Soon, the lazy silence of the alley was changed to a great din. People were screaming and running in all directions, trying to salvage their few meager belongings from their humble hovels. "Quick," said Tom. "We must get back to the warehouse." He darted across the street, but just too late. The hooves of a passing horse caught him, and he was quickly trampled underfoot by the angry crowd that followed the soldiers. Tayo crept away, full of grief. Now she was alone with her unborn kittens. She must get back to the warehouse and see if she could find some more food. It took her a long time to wend her way through the chaos back to the place that she and Tom had called home, only to find, much to her horror, that it had been burned down. She heard the voices of more soldiers. "No wonder we have plagues, a nest of disease-hidden rats. The sergeant will be pleased with you, Mario, for putting an end to that filth." As the soldiers left, Tayo crept under the charred remains of some old boxes which still held the warmth from the flames. She had to find some food for herself. Her kittens were due, and they would need to be fed. She slept on the problem for an hour or so, and when she woke up, she knew that there was only one thing to do. She must take a chance and go to the smart houses. After all, Tom had told her how fine nobles often left pieces of good food that were thrown into large barrels to be collected by the carters when they were full. Perhaps there might be a morsel among these. It was dark by then, and Tayo moved silently and slowly on her errand of life, keeping well in the shadows in case some fine person might see her and be offended by her presence. At first there was nothing, and then a smell. Could it be? Yes, it was. The smell of fresh meat. There was a pair of iron gates that seemed to lead to the back entrance of a very large house. As she was so thin, Tayo was able to squeeze through the bars easily. She followed the scent, which led her across a rough courtyard to where several large, barrel-shaped objects were standing, one of which seemed to be quite warm. Tayo tried to jump to the top, but it was just a little too high for her in her weakened condition. Then she noticed a sort of handle on the far side, and by using it to pull herself up, she was able to look over the top and see what there was inside that smelled so good. And there it lay, the remains of some noble person's meal, no doubt. Tayo started to tuck in for all she was worth. It was wonderful, like nothing she had ever tasted before, and fresh, too. She had eaten her fill and was just about to climb down from the bin when there was a shout.
"Hey, Marco, there's a filthy cat here, and look at the state it's in. It must surely be carrying the plague. Quick, kill it!"
Tayo tried to jump down so that she could escape, but the weight of her kittens and her own weakness prevented her from moving quickly enough. She fell to the ground, and before she could regain her balance, a rain of blows descended on her. For a moment the pain was dreadful, and then suddenly it was all gone. Tayo, the Pasha, looked down and saw the two men set fire to the battered body, and then he realized he was not alone. The 3 kittens and Rayan were there, waiting for him. Tayo was happy again as the little group made their way to the places of their ancestors to rest for a while and think about the injustices of men and the darkness that had spread over the blue planet.